Hello, everyone. Today we have an important webinar on sacred values and traditional wisdom of the Indigenous peoples. I wish to acknowledge that New York City is built on the ancestral lands of the Lenape people. My name is Audrey Kitagawa, and I will be the moderator for this webinar. This webinar is being simultaneously translated from English to Spanish and Spanish to English. If you look at the translate button at the bottom of your Zoom screen, please select the language that you wish to hear. Indigenous communities around the world have been victims of ethnocide, their cultural and spiritual traditions marginalized or eradicated by colonialists and other groups. Despite threats to their cultural identities, they have maintained their spiritual foundation and sacred relationship with the earth, which they view as family. Today, in the face of biodiversity loss and damage caused by extractive industries, the Indigenous people's stewardship of the forests, lands, rivers, and oceans is increasingly critical. Studies confirm that environmental decline and degradation is happening at a slower rate on Indigenous lands, where they are doing a better job of managing natural resources and environmental hazards like species decline and pollution. They have cared for the land for millennia with practices based on spiritual values and traditions that recognize the oneness of life and regards the natural world as sacred. They have a deep sense of responsibility to protect and preserve the environment for future generations. And we are very privileged to have 5 panelists with us today to share their expert perspectives on why the sacred values and traditions of the Indigenous peoples are so needed today, and how this ancient wisdom can help change the trajectory of climate change and environmental damage. I will briefly introduce all 5 speakers, but their bios will appear in the chat box when they begin their presentations. Our first speaker today is Rosalia Gutierrez. She is a leader of URI's Indigenous People of Argentina Cooperation Circle in Buenos Aires. She is a founding member of URI, which stands for United Religions Initiative, an interfaith leader in Buenos Aires, and a former URI Global Council trustee. Rosalia, you now have the floor.
Mother Earth. She's calling Mother Earth. Nature and the ancestors and my grandparents and my mother Raimunda and my father. These days I have been dreaming on them. I know that they are happy. They are together with me because for us, the dead are alive, the ancestors. I'm Kosha people. I'm from Jujuy province in the north of Argentina. My parents are agriculture people. They nurture llamas. Our parents went to work in the forest, and there in the forest is where I was born. I was born among trees. My parents learned to live with the teaching of Mother Earth, with the nature. And this is what they taught me. And this is what they showed me with their example and their lives. Our homes are of mud, of stones and trees and plants. Mother Earth gave everything for us to create our home. And they observed how the birds work their mud house, and that's why they were able to create our own house with a window to allow the sun to come in the home and get our place warmer. They taught me all the cycles of life, the songs, the dances. I love dancing when it is rainy day. I want to sing when the sun is out. When the sun is out, I speak with the sun. I show the sun that here we are And this is what I want to talk with you, the connection with life, the connection with earth, the connection we might have among ourselves. People ask me, what do you do to connect with the earth? It's easy, I say. If you are able to connect with a person that is beside you and the trees that are beside you and the birds that you don't need to go to a different place. This is the connection that I learned. And I have this connection in my mind, even though I live in the city. We don't have to be afraid of the buildings. The buildings are also part of nature. It is important that wherever we are connected, mentally connected. We embrace what is beside us. This is how we were brought up. When we throw water and the world is contaminated, my arm, my head, everything in me reacts to that contamination. But I go back to the connection with the earth because there's the wisdom. My parents didn't study to learn this knowledge. They observed. I suggest that you observe. When you go to a square, when it is going to rain and you see the ants are running. So you will learn that it's going to be that raining. Also, when the ants and the animals will tell us when there's drought. In May, we call the month of the Chacana, the bridge between up and down, the stars and the land. Also, the star shows us the 4 stars of the South Cross shows us how the weather is going to be. The stars tell us if there's going to be conflict. This is why we, in this month of May, we have a special care in observing whatever we do to nature and whatever we do to other people or animals or plants, whatever what we do is going to come against us or for us. In illnesses, the other person is part of Mother Nature, and we get back what we give to them. When I started, I am a sociologist. I went to the university 6 years. I want to give you this learning. The opposites are complement. The day and the night, the country and the city, the lineal time and the circular time. The circular time is a time I can continue and continue because this is the way life goes. When we die, we are born again. I think that my mother, who has already passed away, is here with me. She didn't pass away in my heart, and she didn't pass because her wisdom is still among us. The life is a feast.
So thank you so much, Rosalia. And our second speaker today is Dr. Manulani Aluli Meyer. She is an associate specialist of student affairs at the University of Hawaii, West Oahu. She works in the field of Indigenous epistemology and its role in worldwide awakening. Dr. Meyer, please share with us.
Rosalia, that was special. Mahalo nui. Thank you so much for that clarity. That is exactly what we in Hawaii believe and practice, and that we observe. Our word for science is to observe deeply. So what I want to do right now for this gathering is to go deeper into what Rosalia was saying, because she is very clearly definitive about connection to land and how our aina, our word, Rosalia, for land is aina. Aina means that which nourishes, that which instructs. It is our word for family also. Aina, it's an old word. So everything you do, when Rosalia was saying, whatever we do returns, whatever we do, it is the same thing. As you sow, so shall you reap. We have aloha aku, aloha mai. The gift, kokua aku, kokua mai. The gift is not waiting to be reciprocated. We give because giving is the gift. Also, what Rosalia was saying is that the opposites are complements. That is absolutely deep knowledge. Rosalia, mahalo nui. I can feel your mother sitting with you right now. So that the opposites are complementary. We have that in the notion of ku and hina, of malokone, mavahune, inside, outside. These things that appear to be opposite are absolutely vital, including conflict, everyone. Conflict is this energetic field that helps us awaken. So unless you know that, people actually say in Hilo, why is it raining? And I look at them because Hilo is famous for ka'ua kanilehua. We have many, many, many names for our rains. And why would you be upset if it rained in a place of rain? Observe the cycles, be educated by the systems of continuity. And that's what Indigenous knowledge really is a synonym for continuity. It's not a bragging thing. It is a fundamental, basic understanding of the world that we must have a relationship, especially with buildings. I love that, Rosalia, that we embrace whatever is beside us. Absolutely. For us here in Hawaii, we are returning to the wider systems of ho'oponopono. Ho'oponopono for us is to use pono to return to pono, to use relative truth to return to absolute truth. And for us, absolute truth is central, the central essence of our purpose in life, and that is to love. Loving is the essence, and ho'oponopono is one of the forms in which we embody the spirit of what is our beloved homeland. So I want to really extend what Rosalia was saying, is that observation is key. And so when you over-rely on text, you miss context. So text is going to be the downfall of Western civilization, Derrida said in the 70s. And what he meant by that is we actually think you're intelligent because you had 100% on a test. No. You were simply good at that test. We have a saying, in a proverb here in Hawaii, Hawaii ka ike he nalui ka hoku ka ale. Show your knowledge of surfing in the ocean, on the back of a wave. So the key idea that I'd like to leave with is that our sacred values of Indigenous people are everyone's concern, because everyone is part and whole in our participation, and how we observe, what we choose to do, how we choose to love, how we choose to clean up our aina, to clean up our lands. And we do this by our own homes. We create a healer in every family. And in Hawaii, that is a process where we are coming to know more and more of as pono. Aloha is the essence, pono is the form. So we are committing ourselves to actually understanding what that essence is. And Rosalia was very clear that that the opposites are complements, and that's the essence. When you really get that the opposite is necessary for our evolution. So when I carve stones, you need a steady hammer, a steadiness, but you need also the random. You see that? The random and the consistency. You need both. So both the opposites are complementary. This is why the challenges of modern society is actually waking us up, is actually bringing us to these kinds of forms so that we can meet each other and energetically connect. We are introducing to the world the idea of transspatial, transempirical, transtemporal knowledge. That's a high mucky muck words for saying spirit exists, and spirit exists and is embodied by our principled behaviors. And if your principled behavior is to love land at the center of your behavior, you're not going to commodify her at all. The commodification of land, the thinking that our land is only to be in relationship to money, is our downfall. So may we arise together and combine our energetic focuses so that we can support each other's clarity, feed each other with the wisdom of our ancients and our beloved mothers, fathers, and grandparents, and continue on this journey of aloha aina, aloha aina, aloha aina. Mahalo.
Thank you so much, Manulani. And our third speaker today is Francisco Morales. He is United Religions Initiative's Global Council Trustee for Latin America and the Caribbean. He is a member of the Aymara community in Argentina, and he is a founder of the Circle of Indigenous Written and Oral Knowledge. Francisco, you now have the floor.
Thank you. I hope that you listen to me. I know that we have technology for interpretation so that we are united in the diversity of lands and knowledges and communities. In principle, I want to call our ancestors whenever we have an activity. We try to have harmony with our neighborhood, and as Rosalia was calling the ancestors, we ask that so that everything is in harmony and flows with happiness that Indigenous people want to share. All our speakers in this dialogue table have rescued something that is very important for me and that is very important to share with you today. Is what we call cosmovision, the Indigenous cosmovision. It is a very deep theme. When we talk about Indigenous cosmovision, we bring something very important. I'm a writer, I'm an Indigenous writer, and I try to find the recuperation or recovering of the Indigenous cosmovision. In our Indigenous languages, those that we had in Latin America, we had a lot of different languages. There's something that is in common. There is kind of a vertebral column that joins all the different communities in the Americas. And this is the cosmovision in Spanish, cosmovisión in Spanish. What do we understand for this cosmovision, this unity in thoughts that unites all Indo-America? We Indigenous people would name it in a different way. In Quechua, in Peru and the north of Argentina, some of Bolivia and Ecuador, Colombia. Kapakmian is the word that we use for the cosmovision word. It means wisdom of the sun. It is the path to the sun. In Aymara, that is one of the most antique community that has 5,000 years of history. In Aymara, this means the good way of living. In Guarani, in the hills and the forest, it's net. And Yandereta is the wisdom of the earth in Spanish. We that are studying all this diversity, we understand that cosmovision indigenous, or cosmovisión en español, for me, a person that lives in the city, is how do we recover? How do we keep this cosmovision that is being lost? This is my concern. We are losing this cosmovision Because our cosmovision, as Rosalia and Manu said, is not, it's a life practice. It's a way of reaching knowledge. It's a different way of understanding. And what do we do with that understanding? I always give an example, and this is different from the Western vision. If the indigenous cosmovision would have been important in the world instead of the Western vision of knowledge, there wouldn't have been a Hiroshima or Nagasaki, not nuclear war. And why? Because the indigenous cosmovision in the way of reaching knowledge is not abstract of life in the world. There's no abstraction in the indigenous cosmovision. Our knowledge is from the earth because we observe and learn from the earth, and it reaffirms with other Mother Earth. Everything that we do in the indigenous world is to deepen the connection with Mother Earth. For example, the different ways that we build houses in the Americas, there are different ways of building homes with different materials. But the knowledge, we can detect that in the Amazonia, they use elements of the area. In Peru, we have stones from the neighborhood. Why? Because we use the elements that the place is providing. This is very common in all communities up in Alaska. And it depends on the indigenous. Some of them are nomads or community that stay in the same place. And this makes a little bit of a change in the construction key criteria. But usually the buildings respects the earth. And this is different from the Western view. High buildings or we can, because the building in the Western view may change the structure of the land. And this is affecting the climate, and it is changing and bringing climate change and hurting the world. It's a joy for me to be able to share with you. I can share my books. We are talking with different indigenous people about this, and there's wisdom, and we have to share this wisdom. We can do this, but we need more spaces like this one in which we can share our knowledge and connect. And this is a message for us indigenous people. We have to go back to the prophecy of the condor and the serpent and the eagle. We have to get together and we have to talk about this together. Thank you very much from the Aymara Nation. I send a warm hug.
Thank you so much, Francisco. And our next speaker today is Michael Raigoza. He's a member of the Paskenta Band of Nomlaki Indians of Northern California. He is the program officer for cultural projects for the 7th Generation Fund for Indigenous Peoples. Michael, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Audrey. Thank you, Rosalia. Thank you, Francisco, and thank you, Dr. Meyer, for sharing. I would like to do a land acknowledgement to the Wiyot people whose land I'm standing on right now, and for them being stewards of this place since time immemorial. I am a member of the Nomlaki tribe, like Audrey said. We are also in Northern California. And today I wanted to talk about the sacredness of fire that California tribes have utilized as a tool and as a wealth of knowledge and a forest management practice since time immemorial. So I'm sure as many of people on the webinar know that California deals with massive and deadly wildfires, and they've been increasing in size and intensity for the last couple of decades. And it's due to fire suppression, prolonged drought, and really just the fire suppression and the suppression of indigenous knowledge and cultural practices of cultural burns. So there is good fire, like I was saying. The cultural burns are what we used to garden our forests. We were labeled as hunters and gatherers, which essentially we are, but we did have a tool that we would use for farming, and that is fire. It would clear the floor of the forest, so the debris, and take, once it rained, the nutrients would go back into the soil. And then we would plant our acorn, we would plant our willow and our hazel for basket weaving, and it gave us a lot of connection to the land. So that's the sacredness of it. It gives us our baskets and our food and acorn. And so recently, California tribes have been trying to reconnect and successfully reconnecting with this cultural practice by getting trained and certified and talking and bringing a seat to the table with state and agencies of California to practice these cultural burns on our reservations and our traditional territories and our traditional forests. So I would like to highlight a few examples of the Karuk tribe here in the Klamath Valley, Klamath River. The Hoopa tribe as well has been doing this and practicing cultural burns. There is a good fire and there is a wealth of indigenous knowledge that is highlighted through this practice, and that we can share across other agencies. And so allowing this connection of government to government relationships between tribes and state agencies really highlights the traditional wisdom and path moving forward for a sustainable future where tribes have a say in what is going on in our traditional territories, as many of the people have spoken about before, and reconnecting. Yeah, so the traditionalness of the fire and fire management, it goes across all of California, and we all have this connection. It also gives us trails for hunting, clearing the forest floor and allowing us to connect with other nation to nation and trade, and really builds a culture with all of our peoples and gives us, like I said, acorn, food, medicine, and a place to travel and home. There. And essentially, that is about what I have to speak about on this topic. If there was anything you'd like to ask Audrey for the prompts or anything along those lines.
Thank you so much, Michael. We will go on to our next speaker, Lauren Van Ham, because we will have a very vibrant question and answer period. And I'm sure there may be participants who would like to know more about your expertise on the sacred fire and the land management. So our fifth speaker is Lauren Van Ham, and she is a climate action coordinator for United Religions Initiative. She served as chaplain in healthcare and corporate settings and seminary dean at the Chaplaincy Institute. And Lauren is spiritual director and serves as guest faculty for several schools. So Lauren, please share.
Thank you very much. It is a pleasure to be with you all today. I am joining you from the Lishan Ohlone Peoples land and the Baxter Creek watershed. I want to lift up just again some of what we have already heard from Rosalia and Michael and Manu and Francisco. These creation-centered Indigenous principles are incredibly instructive and highly important for all of us on the earth right now. And in all humility, I am joining you today as a non-Indigenous person, very interested and eager to implement and learn from these traditional ways of knowing, because I am quite aware that currently we are using things around the world that are extractive and exploitive and causing harm. So I am grateful for these teachings today and very specifically some of the nuances that I've already heard from Rosalia saying, buildings are also sacred. Buildings have nature within them. And Francisco saying, and let's be thoughtful about what sort of materials we are using to create our buildings, right? So I'm going to share an image, a couple of images now. Here we go. Audrey Kitagawa was so right in reminding us about what is at stake right now. We have 80% of our remaining biodiversity is on land that is tended by our Indigenous teachers. And it is critical that we learn from how they are tending land and keeping fire and protecting water. And this global biodiversity framework, which was adopted at the end of 2022, has a number of targets. And as Manu has said, this is all just text until we bring traditional knowledge and Indigenous ways of being into practice. Until we implement these ways of knowing, these are just words on a page. So this is the real invitation for us right now. And we see that this is not all of the targets that came out of this global biodiversity framework, but we see that Target 22 is very specifically inviting us into this space that we are talking about today. This is one example of a cooperation circle in the United Religions Initiative Network, who is really, I think, trying to bring embodiment to the text of these target areas and the principles that our Indigenous speakers have presented today. So Nasakuri is a cooperation circle in Uganda. And just in this one slide with my remaining moments, I will suggest that they are one group that is doing a wonderful job of bringing in non-Indigenous people, other faith leaders, other civic leaders, university professors and students. And together they are practicing ways of teaching Indigenous research and teaching people under the age of 30 how to tend the land and the water and the fire in ways that will not harm, but can actually regenerate the planet. They are also continuing to bring agroforestry practices, these very ancient and informed ways of tending the forest while also protecting our food, and banking their seeds so that we have for many, many years to come ways of growing our food and taking care of one another in ways that are truly, truly regenerative. So I am interested in this bridge building that can happen between the ancient and the future, between our elders and the youth, between those who have always lived close to the earth and people like me who have been more removed from some of the ways that that happens. I know we have not much time to do this because it is urgent that we make these changes. And I am so grateful for our mentors and teachers in all parts of the world who have been living these ways for a long time so that we can grow and learn together. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lauren. And now we will go into the question and answer period. Let me begin with in the order of the speakers, Rosalia. This is a question I have for you. As an Indigenous woman activist, how do you perceive the role of Indigenous women in preserving and transmitting traditional knowledge systems and in advocating for environmental protection, biodiversity, conservation, and equitable access to resources. So, Rosalia, that was a mouthful.
We are not going to talk about women alone, but the community. The role of women is in the community, in complementarity with the men and the nature and the community. The whole community sustains. Each of us have a role. It's not individual. So it is very important that we keep the community. As a woman, of course, each group, as Kosha people, we are prepared in the community as strong women. We do the same work that men are doing. This is how we are educated in the community, and we strengthen each other. Each of us have a role. Even the children and the grandparents have a function. In my function as a woman in the community, we are mothers. All mothers are mothers of everyone in the community. We are also grandmothers of everyone. So for me, I don't have natural biological kids, but all children in my community are my children, my grandchildren. And this is what we want of society, that we keep community. So nobody would be no children would be asking in the streets, because if we all take care of all children, we would take care of every children. There wouldn't be poor children or ill children. We would all take care of the children of the community.
Thank you so much, Rosalia. So we'll go on to Dr. Meyer. I have the question, what are some Hawaiian principles that you are bringing forth in the world?
Here we go. Well, there are many, and the main one is aloha. Aloha is our primal source. It's not just one of the values, it's not just one of the principles. Aloha is this resounding, energetic field of compassion and love. So when we say aloha aku, aloha mai, we're not saying, why am I not loved? We're saying it's about loving. So we're bringing the verbs back into all nouns. And because we do recognize that matter is energy, and that energy, when the essence of that energy is loving, then that continuity is there. What Rosalia was talking about is that we don't separate the energetic field of connection. Women can do whatever men do, but our job is communion with others. So that sense of aloha is instructive for me, and we embody it in our practices when we talk to each other, and when we don't do it well, we have practices to forgive ourselves, and that practice is ho'oponopono, the use of oya i'o, which is the absolute center of truth. So we're regaining our sense of healing by practicing. The central idea is to share. Our word for wealth is vai vai. It means water, water. So anybody who accumulates their wealth, poting, we have to give it and share it. That sense of connection is a real ideal for us, and I appreciate that. But aloha, pono, things like mihi. Mihi is our idea of mentoring through love. Mihi is also a word for forgiveness. So we are regaining our standing in our principles and values by practicing them. Our proverb, my favorite one, the simplest one, is makahana ka'ike, makahana ka'ike. It means, by my actions, teach my mind. So the doing is where aloha lives. You don't just say, Auntie, do you need help? You go and help. Uncle, you need help? You go and help. Oyavale. So maloko ne mawahone, we believe that our actions speak much louder and much more eloquently ever than our words. Mahalo.
Thank you so much. We have a question, and the questioner has not chosen to address this question to any particular speaker. So we'll open up the floor. So the question is, we each value our tradition. What tangible ways can we manifest how we value them? Anybody would like to take that question? Okay. Yes. Francisco.
My answer would be how we use the knowledge and how we use the knowledge that we have. As I commented before, when we speak about how we organize our society, it should be there reflecting our knowledge, how we came to that. I go back to the indigenous languages. Our organization was in the Int'l. This is in Quechua, the unity around the sun. We organize our world, our life around the sun, in the harmony with the sun. So everything that we do in a material world, in our practice life, it has to do with that. We have to start to change the criteria with which we construct or build the things. It's a challenge because there are universities, there are schools in the whole world that are at this moment question themselves about the choices they do, but there is also a resistance from the society that still don't understand. It's not that we can save one person and the other not. Here on the planet, we save together or nobody is saved. We do that together.
So thank you so much. The next question we have is specifically for Michael. Would Indigenous land management practices through the use of fire, if implemented throughout California forest lands, minimize the potential of disastrous and destructive massive fires that destroyed cities and communities in past years?
Yes, absolutely. Because the issue right now with our forests, like I was saying before, is the fire load buildup on the ground level, combined with drought and combined with drought and the bark beetle that is attacking the bark of the big trees. So as the fourth floor builds up and these trees canopy of the second growth, because we logged the old growth where the canopy was 30 feet off the ground, is now down to 10 to 15 feet above the ground. Those two fire loads are coming together, causing these huge disastrous fires. And so what we can do without combating a logging industry or doing any of that, what we can do with our hands on the ground is removing that lower level fire load and using the good fire, as I was calling it, to remove that, so that when a fire does come, it doesn't build up and burn so hot and intense on the bottom where it catches the 15-foot canopy on fire and also burns through the fire adapted bark, because the bark is meant as fire resilient and these trees are fire adapted. But when it burns so hot and we're dealing with prolonged drought, they don't have that fire resistance or fire adaptation to defend themselves for as long. So it will definitely minimize the potential of these large destructive forest fires because they're not going to burn as hot, essentially.
Okay, thank you so much. And then we have another question. And now we have lots of questions, actually. And for the Latin panelists, how does the governments interact with Indigenous tribes? And do they help promote Indigenous practices and beliefs? And if not, what needs to be done to help promote Indigenous people in a civic setting? Rosalia, Francisco?
It is difficult for me to give an answer to that question because indeed the governments don't know many things. They think that indigenous don't know anything, that we are poor. The word poor is that they don't understand that we have a lot of value. We are working with governments in Argentina when the indigenous organizations were founded because we're working for our rights. But I'm aware that this is happening because of ignorance. They don't know. They knew the alternatives that indigenous people can bring, the Latin American countries would grow because the indigenous people can bring a lot of resources. We have the quinoa, that is a food, has a lot of power. With a little bit of quinoa, it is for the health of whole body, the mind, and we wouldn't spend a lot of money in buying foods. The health and the medicine that comes from the land. I was preventing COVID because of the eucalyptus rather than the vaccine. We have a lot of knowledge how to complement the opposites in many of the countries here in Latin America, especially in Argentina. We are polarized. Society is divided into two, the populism, the right and the left. Sometimes I think, how can I help to contribute against this polarization? I'm talking with indigenous young people so that we are able to recover what we learned. We could overcome conflict. Why is it that we, the First Nations of the world, we are not in war with the people that came from Spain? It is because we have this tool that is the opposite, are complementary, day and night. And so the Spaniards and the indigenous could get out of conflict. It's not that they feel our ceremonies as folklore, but they know that this is a way of learning or approaching the conflict. And it's fact that we are in a circle time, and we are trying, the university students and those that are in politics, to understand. And there is a lot that we can contribute, but we have to be able to, they have to think that the knowledge is not in academy only, but indigenous can help in education. Sometimes we are more valued outside Latin America than inside of Latin America. So happy of this encounter in which you are opening to indigenous people what they bring, not if they are poor or rich, but they are rich of knowledge. I think that the governments have to see inside and find the knowledge in indigenous people.
Hey, thank you very much. Another question is very specific, and it's about directed energy weapons. So if this is not something you would like to address, or if you have knowledge about this and would like to address it, the question is, can anyone discuss how directed energy weapons, specifically lasers, are the cause of the fires? So there is an assumption here that directed energy weapons are being used to cause fires. And this is followed up by Maui, California, and our territory here in North Shuswap, Canada, all exactly the same fire destruction, melted metal, but standing trees. Can anyone discuss how directed energy weapons, specifically lasers, are the cause of fires? Maui, California, and our territory here in Canada, all exactly the same fire destruction. Yes, go ahead, Manulani.
Thank you, Audrey. I just want to say that Laha'aina, our word for prophecy is Laha. Laha'aina is the land of prophecy. So we believe it did not start by lasers. I live on the island of Oahu, and we were preparing for a massive fire just the day before it happened, because the conditions of the wind, because we have an awareness of where we live, how we live, and what is around us, we were prepared. And right across the channel was Maui in the same dry conditions, and no one was aware. So it is not a laser that started our Hawaiian fire. It is the nature of our times to understand the larger systems. We see it as a larger system, and that is a system that the water was taken. By 1860, the place was basically barren and dry. But Lahaina, the place of prophecy, is very important for us in Hawaii to regain a clear understanding of not only what happened, but how we can regain our water resource. Lahaina was the place of we called it Aina Momona. We had hundreds and hundreds of lo'ikalo taro patches, hundreds of ulu and coconut groves. And we gave to the passing ships for many decades when they started to arrive here in the 1770s and 80s. And so please don't include Maui in that. We knew how it started, and that is the ignorance of not understanding what heat and prolonged drought and fire conditions. So people who do not understand land and land collaboration with our ignorance, you know what I mean? So what Rosalia is saying, this is all connected. It is all connected. Our sustained ignorance about how to maintain moisture, how to create the unbelievable resources of our brackish waters. And we steered it away. By 1850s and 1860s, it went all the way to grow sugarcane in Maui. So I want to ask you very kindly to not include Hawaii in that list. Thank you, Audrey.
Hey, thank you very much. So there's a lot of facts that we really need to know about these areas and not draw assumptions as to how these fires are started. So thank you for that answer. So another question specifically directed to Michael. On the cultural burn idea, can you provide any specifics as to how you do that? Spread control, location identification, where do you burn and how do you control the burn so that it doesn't spread out of control? So Michael?
Well, if it's on a reservation, then it's up to the tribe to decide how to do it. But what's been happening for off of reservation on traditional territories, they've been working with the Forest Service. We've been working with different tribes and working with the Forest Service. And so that's how we do a location identification. The Forest Service and the CAL FIRE is what is called California Fire Department, essentially has been doing cultural burns, but they're called prescribed burns for the last 30 years or so. So they have locations and areas already identified. It's now bringing the tribal fire departments to the table and bringing them out to those locations, and working with and teaching and certifying tribal members to work on it. So the spread control and location identification are based off of the state agencies if it's outside of the reservation and on traditional territories of Native tribes. The spread control is essentially like you would do with any other type of fire. You cut a fire line, you build up and bring the large debris, whether it be logs, fallen trees, you cut them up and you put them into a pile, and you burn the leaf litter or smaller twigs along the floor with a fire department, a truck on hand, or with where you lay a line and bring hoses out to a certain feet. And so it's essentially like you would fight any fire. Is you have to cut a fire line, remove the debris, the big, large debris on the ground, and then burn the little stuff so the fire doesn't have anything to catch on to. And obviously it's not done during a windy, hot summer day. It's done during the spring while the trees are still damp and that you aren't going to have a wind take an ember and go catch another place on fire. So location identification is based on how much debris and fire buildup there's already on the ground, where the state agency has identified, and it's dependent on weather. So if it's rained there in the last few weeks, or if it's going to be windy a certain day, essentially like that. So spread control location, and then where do you burn? So right now, the main priorities are the public land, the national forests, because those are the ones that have been untended to for 170 years, since 1850, the California Indian Protection Act, that was the original suppression of cultural burns. So a lot of those forests have been untouched and mismanaged for the last 170 years. And so that's the location at the moment.
Thank you. And a question from the audience. Please explain what the difference is between having a controlled burn by your tribe and a controlled burn by community, and address the concern from society about this.
They're the same thing. It's just allowing tribal people to practice their culture once again. But prescribed burns and cultural burns are essentially the same thing. It's cleaning up the forest and managing it in a more productive way. I will say about cultural burns is what we are implementing, re-implementing, I should say, because it's done forever, is like I talked about before, is it's one thing to go through and burn and then just leave it how it was, but we want to replant native plants in that process. So it's one thing to just go and clear it, but also manage it and grow food and acorn and fire adapted plants that have been here for time immemorial, that have been overrun with invasive species due to logging, essentially everything that cleared the forest in the beginning and allowed other invasive plants to grow. So once we burn the floor, it's about replanting and being regenerative and reciprocal. The fire just cleared for us. Now we want to give back to the earth by providing food to our animal relatives, or providing medicine and just giving native plants a place to grow again in the forest.
Thank you so much. And we have, I'm going to close this question and answer period. So we can give the panelists the opportunity to give your conclusory comments, 2 minutes apiece, that you would like the audience to take home from your important message that you shared with us today. So we're going to start in the order of speakers. And so, Rosalia, you now have the floor to give your conclusory comments.
Well, there's a lot that I want to say at this moment. There's a lot of knowledge that Indigenous people keep. What I want to say is that we have to grasp that knowledge. Indigenous people are open to dialogue, to contribute, because whatever is good for the earth is good for the Indigenous people and in balance. So it is very important that we believe that we are part of the earth. We are here to contribute as we can. The opposites are usually not complemented, and this is why there's because conflict is here. The circular time is not is the opposite to the linear time. I have a circular time. Everybody is in the linear time. Everyone wants things now, and everything is just disposable. My message is that the world needs to understand who the Indigenous people are, and we would be able to live in harmony with the world. The humanity needs to connect with the earth. The humanity connecting with the earth will understand the indigenous people that are here, but also the animals and the rest of the world. It's easy to connect with the earth, even through the computers. Sometimes I do ceremonies through the Zoom, and this is energy, and we have to receive that energy. We are full of energy, and we are the small energy. Why don't we connect so that we bring the highest energy to the earth, Halyala, to the earth?
Thank you so much, Rosalia. So, Manulani.
Ulu Uluae ke velina a ke aloha. Uluae ke velina a ke aloha. Uluae ke velina a ke aloha. I just want to say that we never speak about the actual essence of what continues in the world and why we're here. And I always try to deconstruct capitalism and claw myself back into a sharing economy. But it's really time. It's really time to pay attention to the energetic field of what keeps us going. Loving land, serving people. Serving land, loving people. It's a simultaneous idea. And it's really part of how we are going to recover ourselves. Aya ilokone, I just wanted to send to you, Jenny. Aya ilokone, the answer is within you. So the answer is within you, the answer is within us, and we all go. Thanks, Francisco. We say it's a kako thing. It's not a mako thing or kaua thing. Aloha kako apau. We all go. But first, let's heal ourselves so that we can help others heal. Mahalo nui no kia. Ai pono. Mahalo nui, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Audrey.
Thank you. So, Francisco.
I am thankful for everyone here, that you listened to me, that I could meet Indigenous people and also Lauren. My reflection is that we have an opportunity to continue to live together in a better way, that we are reconnecting with this knowledge. It is a time to change. There's a change with climate change, but also with the changes that these connections are building through the cellular phones, artificial intelligence. We are in a challenge, but the solution for many of the things is that we go back to the simplest in the knowledge of our grandparents, that we connect, first of all, the Indigenous people connect with themselves, and we recover our cosmovision in the language and the practice that we have. My message is to the Indigenous people, let us go back to our cosmovision. And my reflection is, what is first, the healing or the cure? This is important to understand the world. He was comparing illness to the cure. What goes first?
Lisa, thank you. Now we'll go to Michael for your conclusory comments.
Yep. Thank you, Audrey. So for my conclusory comments, I would just like to say that we've talked about a lot of indigenous and traditional knowledge today, which is very important. And science, or Western science, has essentially or almost caught up, or not caught up, but come to the realization that indigenous knowledge holds a lot of value. And I would just like to say that when Western science or whatever agency or whoever you work for brings that indigenous knowledge to the forefront, I want to make sure they bring the indigenous people with it. Don't just take the knowledge and use it for themselves. Bring the indigenous people who they gain that knowledge from to the table so they can have a voice, because we're all still here and we're all very resilient. So I just wanted to make that point, saying that if you're going to use the knowledge, bring the people with it and give them a seat at the table, because we are here and we know how to use the knowledge, and we would like to share it so we can make this a sustainable future. So thank you again, and thank you to all the panelists and everyone who is here listening.
Thank you. And now, Lauren, your conclusory comments, please.
Yes, Thank you, Michael. You have said it so beautifully. What I was also thinking, we have heard in many different ways today how relationship with everything is everything. And Manu, you had said, we give because giving is the gift. So for us to be coming from that space, we have the incredible privilege in our hands right now of making good choices, choices that are based on relationship and relationship with that which is life-giving. I get to be in relationship with trees, with soil, with water. And one of the ways that I do that is by continuing to invite the Indigenous voices into the spaces where they have not been centered. So a land acknowledgement is one way of continuing to bring us back to those who have always tended the land, but we need to take that farther. We need to have the bodies in the room for decision making, and we need to remember the rights of all beings, including our water and our land and our plants, so that we can really, really be making decisions for 7 generations and beyond. And it is just a pleasure to be learning with you all today, and thank you for the invitation to share some thoughts.
Well, thank you so much to all of our speakers for your conclusory comments, your presentations, and your answers to the numerous questions that we have had. We are not able to cover all of the questions, but Laura, may I ask that you take a look at the question and answer box? There was one addressed specifically to you and organizations such as yours, and how you all can work together. So thank you so much. And I would really like to express my deepest appreciation to all of our speakers. And you have each provided such fascinating insights on the importance of the sacred wisdom and traditions of Indigenous peoples and how they are really transforming communities and have the potential to help change the trajectory of climate change and environmental damage around the world. And our gratitude also extends to our 2 interpreters for your capable interpretations of this topic. And the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples recognizes their lands, their rights to lands, the territories and resources, and encourages nations to engage Indigenous peoples to help solve global environmental issues and reestablish our relationships with nature and all life forms. And this acknowledgement of Indigenous rights and capabilities is raising the profile and influence of Indigenous wisdom in the search for solutions to the environmental challenges faced by so many communities and the lingering injustices based on colonialism, racism, and social exclusion have limited the involvement of Indigenous peoples in policymaking and environmental strategy discussions and solutions. And for the sake of our planet, these barriers must be addressed and removed. And we must all take responsibility for educating ourselves and developing a deeper understanding and awareness of the structural discrimination against Indigenous peoples. And we must support Indigenous programs and empower the Indigenous people by using whatever platforms we have to illuminate these issues and advocate for Indigenous political representation so their voices will be heard and heeded. Becoming an ally and supporter of Indigenous rights requires educated and informed advocacy and awareness raising. And the modern world has much to learn from the sacred traditions of the Indigenous peoples. The healing, regeneration, and stewardship of our shared home, planet Earth, must begin with a commitment to honor the natural world as a beloved part of ourselves and of the divine. Nature should not be seen as a source of economic value, but as a living entity, a beloved family member, deserving of our deepest honor and respect. our relationship with the natural world and each other must be based on respect, love, and caring. And I thank all of you for joining us today. And I am also from Hawaii, just as Manulani is. And I thank you for joining us today. And I wish you all a very good afternoon and aloha nui loa. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye-bye.